He found her where the buzzards had already begun to circle. The heat had boiled the color out of everything by then. Sky white as bone, dust red as dried blood. I was 3 days off my own trail, chasing a horizon that kept slipping away when I saw the wagon. What was left of it anyway. Wheels burnt to stumps, canvas gone to ash, one mule stiff and half buried in sand. She lay a few feet from it, face down, half covered by the wind. For a second, I thought she was just another carcass the sun hadn't finished. Then, her hand twitched. I knelt beside her. The smell of smoke and sweat hit first, then the faintest sound, a dry rasp, not quite a word. Her skin was hot enough to blister my palm. She'd been through hell and stayed awake long enough to crawl out of it. A silver band on her finger caught the light, clean, unburnt, wedding kind. I remember staring at it too long, a symbol of something I hadn't believed in for years. I gave her my last canteen sip. She tried to speak, but all that came out was dust. I told her to save her breath. We had a long ride ahead if she wanted to see another sunrise. When I lifted her, she was louder than a saddle blanket, bones shaking against my chest. My horse didn't like it, snorted and pawed the ground, but I swung up anyway, one arm holding her steady, one hand on the reins. Every step the gelding took jarred her awake a little more. Once she whispered something, too faint to catch. I told her she was safe now, though I didn't know if that was true. By sundown, the desert turned to a red sea, wind cutting at our faces. I stopped once to rest under a bluff, wrapped her in my coat. When I moved it aside, I saw something glint beneath her torn shawl. Not jewelry, metal, star-shaped. A badge. For a long minute, I just stared at it, feeling my mouth go dry. I'd buried my own once years ago, the same way I'd buried my faith in what it meant. If she was law, she'd made enemies worth killing for, and whoever torched that wagon might still be out there, watching to see if their work was finished. She stirred again, and her lips formed one broken word. Please. I didn't ask what for. I just tightened my grip, turned my horse north, and rode into the dark. By the time the stars came out, I'd already forgotten the town I was heading toward. Whatever I'd been running from, it could wait. Because the desert had handed me something worse than guilt, a reason to care again. And that, I knew, was a dangerous thing to carry.
Her first word in days was a name every outlaw feared. We were 3 ridge lines from the nearest town, wind tearing across the plain like it wanted to peel the skin off our bones. I'd been rationing water and lies, told her she'd be fine, told myself the same. The truth was, I'd never carried anyone that close to death before who still had breath in 'em. She shivered in the saddle against me, her head lolling as fever burned through her. When she finally spoke, it came out a whisper, cracked by thirst. "Clay Rowan," she said. The name hit me harder than the sun ever could. Sheriff Rowan. I'd heard it in whispers around campfires, in the kind of voices that checked the dark before they spoke. Lawman with a smile for the papers and a rope for the rest. I slowed the horse. "You know him?" I asked. Her eyes fluttered, unfocused, but the word she rasped next was enough. "Husband." For a moment, the world went quiet. No wind, no hoofbeats, just the hiss of blood in my ears. The sheriff's wife, left for dead on a burned trail. I thought of that badge I'd seen under her shawl, not a trinket after all, her own, maybe his once. Either way, it meant the desert had played matchmaker between two ghosts, one that used to believe in justice and one that still carried its corpse. By nightfall, her fever worsened. I built a fire and set her close, spooning drops of water between her lips. She muttered nonsense for hours, pieces of confession tangled with dreams. I caught words like ambush and silver mine and orders. Then she said something that froze me solid. He left me. I waited, hoping she'd say more, but her breathing steadied, soft, distant. I sat there a long time, watching sparks drift into black sky. Somewhere out east, Sheriff Rowan wore his badge and smiled in photographs, while his wife rotted on a trail he'd chosen. By dawn, the fever broke. She opened her eyes, clear for the first time, and whispered, "You shouldn't have saved me." I smiled without humor. Too late for that. Her hand tightened on my sleeve. "Then don't stop now." I didn't.
Every man in town looked away when I said her name. We rode in slow, the kind of slow that tells strangers you're watching for trouble. The place was called Whitestone. Whitewashed fences, tied at church, no sound but the creak of shutters. Looked honest from 50 yards out. Up close, it smelled like secrets left too long in the sun. The widow, I still didn't know her name proper, sat straight in the saddle, face hidden by my old hat. The fever had burned out of her, but something colder took its place. First stop was the doctor's. He cleaned her burns and said nothing about the badge under her shawl. His hands shook the whole time, like treating her might earn 'em a ghost's curse. When I asked where Sheriff Rowan was, he flinched. "Out at the Silver Bend claim," he said too fast. "Been there near a month." "Doing what?" The man swallowed. "Keeping the peace." We both knew that was a lie. I left her to rest and went to the saloon. Wood floor scrubbed clean, mirror polished, but the laughter died the second I stepped in. Every eye tracked me like I'd dragged a coffin behind me. "I'm looking for Sheriff Rowan. His wife's alive." That line dropped like a stone in a well. No echo, just silence. The bartender polished the same glass until it squealed. "Ain't seen him. You must be mistaken. Is she wearing a ring like this?" I held up the one I'd found, slipped halfway off her finger. His hand froze mid-wipe. That's when I saw it. The undertaker sitting in the corner, grinning into his whiskey. A grin that said he knew exactly what had happened to her, and that it was supposed to stay buried. I walked over. "You know her?" He took his time finishing the drink. "Knew of her. Folks say she ran off. Some women don't take kindly to small-town law, or to men who think they are it." His grin widened. "You're digging in the wrong soil, friend. Round here, we let the past lie still." I leaned close. Maybe I'm not the burying kind. For a heartbeat, the room held its breath. Then he laughed, low and mean. "Then you best not stay long enough to need a coffin." When I stepped back out into the sunlight,
The street was empty. Not a child playing, not a door half open. The whole town was pretending nothing had happened, which meant something terrible had. That night, by the lamplight of a rented room, she told me her name, Etta Ruin. Her eyes were dry when she said it. She whispered, they all knew it, every one of 'em. I asked her what she meant, but she just turned her face toward the window. Tomorrow, she said, I'll show you where the law really sleeps.
She said her husband's badge was bought in blood. We left Whitestone before dawn, riding in silence through low fog that clung to the sage. The air smelled like rain that would never come. Etta rode steady beside me now, wrapped in a borrowed coat, face set hard as the land. Whatever fear she'd carried was gone, replaced by something colder, purpose. We stopped near a dry creek bed. She dismounted, knelt in the sand, and dug with her bare hands. At first I thought she'd gone mad. Then the metal edge of a small tin box caught the light. Inside, a folded letter, a photograph, and a broken badge. His first one, she said, voice flat, before he bought the new. I picked it up. The number was half filed off. What do you mean, bought? Etta looked past me, toward the horizon. Clay wasn't law when I met him. He was a rider for the Dawes gang, ran messages, guarded shipments, and killed who they told him to. Then one day he found out there was more money in pretending to be righteous. The territory needed a sheriff. The gang needed a front man. Her mouth tightened. So they pinned a star on their own wolf. I felt my stomach turn. You tried to stop him? She said, I tried to believe him. When he swore he'd quit, that he'd clean the town and set things right, but the mine changed him. The Silver Bend claim he was stealing payrolls, killing miners who spoke up. I found his ledgers. He sent his men after me that night, said it'd look like an ambush. She brushed the sand from her hands. Guess they missed. The wind rose, tugging at her hair. I watched her, saw the scar on her jaw catch the light. There was no weakness left in her, only a kind of tired strength that made my throat ache. He'll know you're alive by now, I said. Good. We rode on until dusk, keeping to gullies and game trails. My mind turned over what she'd said. A lawman turned bandit, using the badge as a mask. It was too familiar. I'd once worn mine for a price, too. My brother's life. A bounty gone wrong. A bullet that found the wrong man. I'd left the badge in the dirt and never looked back. Now, seeing hers glint under the shawl, I felt that old ghost stir. That night, by our small fire, I told her the truth. I was a deputy once, buried the wrong man, haven't slept right since. She looked up, eyes shining in the firelight. Then you know why I can't stop, she said. I do. She reached into her saddlebag, drew out the broken badge, and pressed it into my palm. Then we ride together. I nodded. To Silver Bend? To judgment, she said. The wind carried the word away like a prayer none of us deserved.
The knife came first, then the warning. We rode into the next town under false names, her as Mrs. Gray, me as Carver. Dusty crossroads, half-empty saloon, the kind of place where law traveled slower than rumor. Etta said we needed to find a man named Tull,
a prospector who once worked the Silver Bend claim before it went private. The locals were nervous. Every question we asked drew eyes, every drink bought another lie. Still, by the third night, I found Tull, gray-bearded, one eye gone, voice like gravel. He sat hunched over a whiskey he couldn't afford, talking to no one until I said Rowan's name. He froze, then whispered, "That devil's wretch now, owns half this dirt, calls it the sheriff's pension." Etta leaned close. "How many men buried for it?" Tull looked up at her like he'd seen a ghost. "You're her," he said. "The one they—" He didn't finish. His gaze went past us, wide with fear. I spun, hand to my gun. Too late. The shadow lunged from the alley, blade flashing. I caught it in the ribs, wrestled him down, felt the knife bite deep into my arm. He fought like a starving coyote until Etta fired once into the dirt beside his ear. That stopped him. Blood slicked my sleeve as I pressed him against the wall. "Who sent you?" He spat dust. "You don't ask the sheriff questions." I slammed him once more, hard enough to rattle teeth. He grinned, all red and broken. "You're already dead, lawman." Before I could press again, his body sagged. The knife wound in his gut had done its work. Etta knelt, searching his pockets. What she found made us both stare. The grip of his revolver, carved with lines and numbers, coordinates maybe, or directions. She held it to the light. "This is the claim, the hideout." I wrapped my bleeding arm and nodded toward the horizon. "Then that's where we go." She looked at me, jaw tight. "You can still walk away, Carver. This isn't your fight." "Maybe not, but I've run from mine long enough." We burned the body and rode out before dawn. My arm throbbed with every heartbeat, blood soaking through the bandage. Each mile felt heavier, like the desert was warning us both. When the sun broke over the ridge, I handed her a note I'd written in the dark. "If I don't make it, finish it." She didn't look at it long. She said, "You'll make it." Maybe she believed that. I wasn't sure I did. The wind kicked up behind us, carrying smoke and whispers we couldn't shake. Ahead, the buttes rose like tombstones, waiting for names.
He waited for the sun to draw their shadows even. We found the sheriff's camp just after midnight, a clutch of lanterns flickering at the base of the buttes, men laughing over stolen whiskey. I counted 7 guards, maybe 8, more horses than a lawman should own, and a tent big enough for a king. Etta pointed toward it, whispering, "That's him." I could see the outline of a man inside, boots up on a table, cigar smoke curling out the flap. Laughter rolled with his voice, easy, unbothered, like the past hadn't come back riding for him. We waited until dawn bled gray over the rocks. I'd barely slept. The pain in my arm had gone dull, the kind that makes you forget you're still bleeding. I checked my gun, loaded one last bullet, the same one I'd been saving since the day I buried my brother. "Stay back," I told her. She didn't argue, just touched the edge of the badge hanging at my belt, hers now, cracked down the middle, and said, "End it clean." When the first light hit the valley floor, I walked in. No sneaking, no tricks, just the sound of my boots in the dust. The camp woke fast, rifles leveled, curses shouted, until he stepped out of the tent. Sheriff Clay Roan looked younger than his legend. Smooth face, silver star shining bright, not a trace of guilt in him. He smiled like we were old friends meeting by chance. "Well, I'll be damned," he said. "Didn't think you'd crawl out of whatever bottle you drowned in." The name hit harder than I liked. I hadn't heard it in years. "You left her to die." He smirked. "You can thank me for that. She was halfway gone when I signed her off. Town needed a story. Widow's carriage lost in a raid. Tidy, simple." My hand twitched toward the gun. "You killed miners, robbed your own payrolls. You wear that badge like it's still worth something." He spread his arms, "And yet here I stand. The law is what folks believe it is, Holt. I just believed first." He laughed then, that easy laugh again, and something in me cracked open. The shot came fast, wild, from one of his men. I dove behind a trough, returned fire, dropped him where he stood. Chaos tore through the camp, men scattering, shouting, muzzle flashes like lightning. When the dust cleared, Rowan was the only one left standing across from me. "You sure you want this?" he called, grinning. "Since the day you burned her wagon." We faced each other in the rising sun, shadows long and even, two ghosts wearing what was left of the law. I drew first. He fired the same heartbeat. The sound rolled across the valley, echoing like judgment. When the smoke lifted, one of us was still on his knees. And it wasn't him.
When the smoke cleared, only one bullet mattered. I hit the dirt hard, shoulder numb, vision tunneling. Rowan stood 20 paces off, gun steady, sunlight glinting on the silver badge I'd come to hate. He walked toward me slow, savoring it, boots crunching over his dead men. "Always figured you'd down your knees, Holt," he said. "Didn't think it'd be for her." I tried to raise my pistol. Empty. He kicked it away. "She never understood," he went on, voice soft like sermon dust. "The badge don't make you righteous. It makes you powerful. That's all this country ever respected." He leveled his gun at my face. I stared at the barrel, at his finger whitening on the trigger. And then his eyes flicked past me, just once, in surprise. The shot came from behind. Rowan staggered, chest blooming red, expression frozen halfway between pride and disbelief. He turned slow toward the ridge. Etta stood there, rifle smoking in her hands, wind tearing her shawl around her shoulders. She didn't say a word. He fell forward into the dust. I heard the thud more than I saw it. Final, absolute. For a long time, neither of us moved. The smoke drifted low, curling around the bodies, the ashes of all our reasons. When she finally came down the slope, her face was calm, empty. She stopped beside me and looked at Rowan's corpse. She said, "It was mine to do." "I know." She crouched, touched his badge, then let it fall from her fingers. "He used this to kill everything good around him. I won't let it bury me too." I pushed myself up, pain flaring down my side. "Then what now?" Etta looked east where the sun caught the edge of the buttes. "We burn it. All of it." Together we dragged the bodies to the fire pit, tossed in the badges, the ledgers, the whiskey, the lies. Flames took fast. hot, roaring, greedy. The wind carried sparks into the open sky, and for the first time in years, I couldn't tell if what I felt was grief or peace. When it was done, we stood there in silence, watching the last embers die. "You'll be wanted for this," I said. She gave a half smile. "You think they'll chase me?" "No," I said. "They'll chase me." She didn't argue, just reached out, brushed the blood from my sleeve, and whispered, "Then run far." I nodded, turned toward my horse. The saddle felt heavier than it ever had. As I rode out, I looked back once. She stood beside the fire, a dark figure against the dawn, hair wild, eyes bright. The widow no longer. By the time the wind took the smoke away, she was gone, and all I had left was the echo of that single shot, hers, ringing in my chest.
He left the road as he found it, except for the flowers. Weeks passed before I trusted the quiet again. I rode north through country so empty it felt like the world had folded me out of its map. The pain in my side dulled with time. The scar didn't. Every morning I woke to the same silence I used to fear. Now it sounded almost kind. Some nights I'd catch myself glancing east, half expecting to see her silhouette against the horizon. Etta Rowan. Sheriff's wife, ghost, survivor, avenger. I never learned where she went after the fire. Maybe she made it back to Whitestone and buried her name for good. Maybe she found somewhere to breathe without looking over her shoulder. The desert doesn't keep records, only memories that fade slow. One morning, riding out past a dry arroyo, I saw the place again. The burned wagon was gone. Sand drifted smooth over the scar, but a patch of flowers had rooted there, yellow against red dust. They shouldn't have grown in that soil, but they had. I dismounted, crouched low, and ran my fingers through the petals. The wind was hot, carrying the smell of rain that never came. I thought about that first day, her breath rasping, the ring glinting, the badge hidden beneath the shawl. Everything that followed felt like it had been waiting right there in the dirt, just waiting for me to stop long enough to see it. I took off my hat, set it beside me. "You were right," I said to no one. "Mercy is the only kind of justice that sticks." A shadow passed overhead, a buzzard, lazy in the heat. For once, it wasn't circling me. I got back in the saddle and looked out over the desert. No destination, no promise, just the horizon, honest and cruel as ever. The kind of place a man could finally tell the truth, even if it was only to himself. I turned the horse west. The sound of hooves faded into the wind, leaving nothing behind but dust and silence. Somewhere behind me the flowers trembled in the breeze, holding their ground against the heat. Maybe that was her mercy. Quiet, stubborn, alive. I didn't pray. I'd done enough of that in other lives. But I tipped my hat to her, to the dead, to the desert that never forgot. Then I rode on, a little lighter, a little smaller, like a man forgiven by a land that had every right to bury him. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel lost, just gone, the right kind of gone.